The sky was bleeding. That's the first thing I noticed as I crawled over what used to be Lieutenant Quan. The second thing I noticed was that my helmet HUD was upside down, which made it look like the sky was bleeding upward. A beautiful, apocalyptic screensaver. Third thing I noticed, because my brain likes to pace itself in moments of imminent death, was that someone had left half a burrito wedged between the console panels of the downed mech beside me. Priorities. I shuffled forward, dragging the leg that no longer worked. The exosuit was trying to recalibrate, but it kept mistaking my femur for a folded chair. Somewhere to my left, someone was screaming in LRI battle tongue, or maybe just yelling into a feedback loop. Their words echoed across the ruined terrain like metal trying to learn how to sing. Above me, a kinetic drone streaked past, trailing white contrails and about 5,000 reasons not to stand up. Not that I could. The battlefield had devolved into a mess of clanging limbs, busted translation units, and the smell of burnt polymers that had once dreamed of being tank armor. Then I saw her. She was walking straight through the chaos like it had personally offended her. She wore command-grade armor in matte black, with glowing violet filaments dancing across the chest plate like electric veins. Her hair, midnight blue with silver streaks, was tied in a braid that looked like it could cut through most diplomatic treaties. And those ears, long, elegant, curling upward like they were tuned into some higher frequency of disdain. She wasn't marching. She was gliding, rage-bound, straight through the no-man's land between our lines. One of our auto turrets tried to target her, but short-circuited itself mid-lock-on. I understood. Some things you just don't shoot at. You just watch, in terror, or awe, or very poor judgment. I raised my head, which in hindsight was a mistake, and tried to speak, but my helmet's vocalizer was fried, so I had to yank it off and shout with the raw, unsponsored voice of a desperate grunt on a bad day. "You look even more beautiful when you're angry," I said, and then the world went silent. I'm not being poetic. I mean literally the sonic dampeners across the field kicked in for a fraction of a second, probably due to a timing glitch in the proximity mines, and everything paused. Her boots stopped. The dust halted mid-whirl. One of our fighter jets froze in the sky like a kid who'd been caught throwing rocks at neighbor drones. Her eyes locked on me. They were the color of twin quasars, distant, ancient, and guaranteed to collapse your sense of self if you stared too long. She tilted her head, not in curiosity, not in anger. It was the kind of tilt that said, "What exactly are you, and can I file paperwork to have you dismantled?" "Sorry," I added quickly, raising a hand. "I have a condition, chronic bad timing. It's terminal." She didn't speak. Instead, she walked toward me with the slow, deliberate pace of someone calculating the exact cost of mercy versus incineration. My heart decided to moonwalk out of my chest. My suit, still convinced I was furniture, chirped a polite error tone. I lay back and accepted my fate. She stopped 2 steps away. The ground beneath her feet had the decency to stop smoldering. I think even the battlefield wanted to know what was going to happen next. "You are injured," she said. Her voice had that unsettling LRI lilt, like a harp being played with a blade. "Not just physically," I said, "but thank you for noticing. You flirt in war. Only with enemies who could kill me in 3 syllables or less." That earned a blink. Her expression didn't change, but I detected a shift in her energy field. Literally. My HUD picked up a momentary stabilization in her psi emissions. Interest, confusion, possibly amusement, or the precursor to neural vaporization. It's hard to tell with aliens. "What's your designation?" she asked. "Theo Merrick, private first class. Technically. Depends on whether the last admin bunker got vaporized or not. You address a high commander without rank protocol. In my defense, you look like someone who hates bureaucracy." Silence again. Somewhere behind us, a plasma tank exploded. Neither of us flinched. She stared at me for a long moment, then tapped something on her gauntlet. My bindings unlocked. I sat up cautiously, ready to be turned into a smear across the dirt. "You will be brought in," she said, "for study." "See, that sounds ominous. Can we say conversation instead? Or strategic coffee meeting?" She didn't reply. Instead, she turned on her heel and began walking back the way she came. through fire and ruin like it was mildly inconvenient weather. A pair of LRI shock troopers approached, weapons drawn. One grabbed me by the arm, the other scanned my spinal cord with something that beeped judgmentally. As they dragged me across the battlefield, I twisted my neck just enough to call out, "Do I get points for originality?" The commander didn't look back, but her ears twitched once. Just once. It was the closest thing to a laugh I'd seen all war. And that's when I knew. Either I had just negotiated my way into a very exotic grave, or I was about to become the weirdest footnote in two galactic military manuals. Both options sounded better than returning to my unit. They threw me into a containment cell that smelled like citrus and existential dread. The walls pulsed with soft blue light, like someone had programmed anxiety into an aquarium. My suit had been stripped, my comm implant disabled, and I'd been left with nothing but standard-issue underlayers and the fading sting of a truly spectacular stun cuff. I sat on a floating bench made of something that adjusted itself every time I tried to get comfortable, as if designed by someone who hated backs. A thin humming filled the air, rising and falling with my breath. At first, I thought it was just me being paranoid, but then the walls flickered and formed the shape of a question mark, a glowing, literal question mark. That blinked, twice. "You people are extra," I muttered. The question mark dissolved. A doorway hissed open with exaggerated drama, and in walked Commander Valeth Ray, taller than I remembered, though maybe that was just the lighting. Her armor had been replaced by a silken exosuit with subtle kinetic plates, and the ends of her long ears glinted with iridescent metal rings that probably did terrible things to satellites. She carried no weapon, which for her felt more threatening. "You are conscious," she said, almost disappointed. "Well, mostly. My left arm thinks it's a toaster now, but I think that's more psychological than neurological." She stepped closer. The walls responded to her presence, adjusting hue and resonance. The bench finally stopped shifting, as if recognizing the presence of its actual boss. "Your neural emissions are erratic." "I get that a lot." "I require an explanation." "Which part? The compliment or the unfortunate timing? Or the bit where I called your ears distractingly poetic under my breath while the field medics were dragging me away?" She paused, then did the scariest thing imaginable. She sat down, not across the room, not behind an interrogation shield. No, she sat beside me, close enough that I could hear the subtle hum of her biocircuitry syncing with the environment. "You confuse protocol," she said. "I do that. I'm a walking HR violation." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You diffuse tension with humor. I also diffuse minds with a stick and blind optimism. Ask my old squad. Well, what's left of them?" A long silence followed. She studied me with a predator's patience, like she was trying to decode whether I was a new species of insect or just deeply defective. Probably both. Finally, she asked, "Do you understand why you are here? Because I called the war's most feared commander beautiful, and now you have to run a full diagnostic on my frontal lobe?" "Partially." "Well, that's alarming. You exhibit anomalies." "I prefer flavor." "You were exposed to a frequency pulse designed to induce neural compliance? It failed." "Oh, yeah, I've had all my shots. Plus, I once licked a reactor core on a dare, so that probably rewired a few things. Human resistance is rarely this idiosyncratic." "I'll take that as a compliment." She stood abruptly. The room dimmed as if relieved. "You will be subjected to behavioral analysis." "Oh, good. I've always wanted to fail one of those with style." Valeth turned to leave, but before she stepped through the threshold, she paused and looked back. "You compared my battle rage to beauty. I stand by it." "Explain." "It's the way you moved. Like gravity owed you money. Like you didn't just walk through laser fire. You invoiced it." Her head tilted again, that subtle, unsettling motion like a satellite adjusting its orbit. "I have never been described as beautiful. First time for everything. Stick with me. I've got a million compliments and no filter." She disappeared into the corridor. Later, a drone entered. It was a spherical thing with twitchy limbs and an attitude problem. It scanned me, asked for my name 5 times, despite already having it, and then offered me a cup of liquid sustenance that smelled like fermented printer ink. I drank it. Out of spite. It turned out the behavioral analysis was just a fancy way of saying, we're going to ask you increasingly weird questions until you break. The next day, I was placed in a room shaped like a hexagon that made my eyes itch. A holographic projection of Valeth watched silently from the wall, while a disembodied voice asked me things like, what is the function of laughter? To scare away death. What is your greatest fear? Group projects. What is your ideal outcome of the war? Mutual retirement and beachfront real estate. Somewhere during the session, the AI analyzing me glitched and started playing a soft jazz version of the Youre national anthem. I danced. Badly. The hologram of Valeth didn't blink. By the fourth day, I was back in my containment cell when she visited again. This time, she brought a second floating bench and a device that looked suspiciously like a game console. You will teach me sarcasm, she said. I blinked. You're sure? It's a dangerous skill. Once learned, it cannot be unlearned, like tax fraud. I am prepared. We spent the next 4 hours in a crash course I called Verbal Misdirection and the Art of Being a Little Bit of a Smartass. She caught on quickly, almost too quickly. By the end, she tricked me into insulting myself with a sentence I helped her construct. It was beautiful. I was so proud. I believe I understand, she said, powering off the device. It is weaponized ambiguity. Exactly. I can use this in combat. Please do. Just promise to quote me in your memoirs. She tilted her head again. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was amusement. Real. Slight. But there. You continue to confuse me, Theomeric. Good. Means I'm doing something right. As she left, the lights flickered again. The citrus smell returned. And I realized something strange. I wasn't afraid anymore. The escape began, as all great military disasters do, with an argument about snacks. I'm just saying, I muttered, digging through the LRI ration crate while alarms wailed in 3 different frequencies. If your empire can terraform gas giants into art installations, surely you can invent something that doesn't taste like spicy drywall. Commander Valeth Ray did not dignify me with a response. She was too busy rerouting power from the collapsing containment bay to our stolen transport shuttle while simultaneously issuing false biometric pings to confuse the pursuit algorithms. Efficiency, thy name was apparently her. My name, meanwhile, was the idiot gnawing on compressed protein triangles while the station decompressed around him. They're nutrient-dense, she said finally, eyes locked on the flickering interface as her fingers danced across alien glyphs. Flavor is irrelevant, I made a face, and yet somehow I am the prisoner. She paused. Not anymore. That got my attention. So did the structural groan from the bulkhead as a nearby corridor crumpled inward like a failed souffle. I dropped the protein slab. It bounced. Twice. You want to explain that not anymore thing? Or should I just assume you've decided to adopt me? You saved my life, she said, as if it were an accusation. I tripped into a plasma vent and knocked over the assassin droid trying to kill you. Let's not oversell it. You disrupted its targeting sequence with your body. That qualifies. So I'm basically a war hero. Fantastic. Do I get a medal? Or just further existential dread? Movement, she snapped, grabbing my arm and dragging me toward the shuttle bay as another explosion rippled through the station. The LRI command believes I've been compromised. Compromised as in emotionally? Because yeah, we've been flirting aggressively. As in contaminated by erratic behavior vectors and empathy loops. Oh, that sounds way worse. We sprinted, or rather she sprinted, and I awkwardly flailed in her gravitational wake, through the final corridor as atmospheric seals failed behind us. Emergency klaxons in both LRI and human standards screamed, "Abandon all dignity," as we reached the vessel. It was sleek, predatory, and already half-lit with stolen core power. My kind of ship. As we boarded, I couldn't help but ask, "What's its name?" She blinked. Designation, Unit 79A. Blasphemy. I hereby rename it the Sassy Comet. She opened her mouth, then, perhaps wisely, closed it. We lifted off just as the station imploded in on itself like a collapsing logic argument. Debris chased us into the stratosphere, but Valeth maneuvered with supernatural precision, skimming plasma fields and cutting through anti-ship grids like a seamstress threading war itself. I was in awe, mostly of her, partly of the inertial dampeners, which were apparently strong enough to keep me from becoming a decorative smear on the back wall. Once we hit stable orbit and the internal gravity settled, I collapsed into the pilot chair beside her and wheezed dramatically. Well, that wasn't stressful at all. I think I popped a spleen, possibly someone else's. You breathe too loudly. Thank you. I pride myself on my acoustic personality. She turned to face me fully. We are fugitives now. I tried to process that. Wait, I was already a prisoner of war. You were the terrifying high commander. You had parking privileges. What happened? I hesitated. She said it like a confession, like it cost her something. I sat up straighter. Because of me? Because I believed there might be something worth understanding. I let that sit between us for a beat. The silence was louder than any explosion. Then I ruined it. Are you developing a crush on me? She stood up and walked away, but not before muttering something in Ellerai that my translator chip rendered as unbearable mammal with punchable charm. I smiled. Over the next several hours, we charted a course through decaying satellite rings and old minefields left from the Third Orbital War. I kept trying to name asteroids we passed. She kept ignoring me. At one point, I suggested we stop at a refueling depot shaped like a squid. She vetoed it with a single glare that made the ship's AI enter safe mode. Speaking of which, the ship's AI, which I also renamed, this time to Captain Sassbot, was not amused. Its voice was dry, clipped, and thoroughly passive-aggressive. Warning, it droned. You have adjusted my name parameters. This will be reported to Central Command, if Central Command still exists. Captain Sassbot, I said, leaning back, plot us a course to the nearest unregulated trading post that won't murder us on sight. There are 12 options, it replied. Only 4 offer beverages. I like those odds. Valeth finally allowed herself to sit, her posture that of a queen forced into public transit. We must find a way to clear our signals. If we are identified, we'll be atomized, hunted, and possibly mocked on intergalactic social feeds. I finished. I've seen the memes. She frowned. Memes? Later. First, we need disguises. Do you have anything less conqueror-y? My wardrobe is functionally armored. Then we're shopping. She didn't argue, which was almost scarier than when she did. Before sleep cycle, she asked me something out of nowhere. Why did you speak to me that day, on the battlefield? I looked at her, at the tension just under her voice. I was concussed and stupid, and I saw someone walking through hell like she owned it, and I couldn't not say something. Beauty demands witness. She stared at me for a long time. Then, in the softest voice I'd ever heard from her, you confuse me, Theo Merrick. I'm like a Rubik's Cube with missing pieces. But I grow on people. I noticed she left the cockpit. I stayed behind, smiling into the dark, and the stars, for once, didn't look like weapons. We landed on the outer shell of Relic Station Zenthral, which was either a derelict archive from a forgotten civilization or a glorified junk closet with good branding. The docking port greeted us with a message in 12 dead languages and one poorly translated version of Human Standard that read, "Enter at own intellectual risk." Naturally, I felt right at home. Valeth scanned the hatch controls while I tried to open a vacuum-sealed snack bar with my teeth. It resisted, possibly because it wasn't food, possibly because it was a self-defense device disguised as a granola square. This station is supposed to be off-grid, she said, eyes narrowing, but I detect residual life signals. Low, faint. Could be ghosts, I said through granola shrapnel, or rogue librarians. Honestly, I'm equally afraid of both. The airlock opened with the wheeze of something that hadn't been touched in centuries and resented the intrusion. Inside was a corridor filled with floating data cores, tangled archive vines, and the kind of smell that suggested mold had evolved into a sentient being and now ran the place. Are you sure this is the right place to find war data? I asked, stepping over a half-crushed robot labeled Mildred. This archive predates the conflict by 4,000 cycles, she replied. If the origins of the war were falsified, this station may hold the original logs. Great, I said. Love peeling back the existential onion. As we walked deeper, the station's AI flickered to life. Its voice was warm, suspiciously cheerful, and deeply unhinged. Welcome, cognitive apes and non-apes, it said, startling me into almost drawing well, I didn't have a weapon, so I just held up the snack bar threateningly. To the Zenthral archive where history is a suggestion. Valeth raised an eyebrow. It's unstable. It's relatable, I muttered. The AI scanned us, paused, then added, one of you is flagged for war crimes. The other is flagged for incompetence. Access granted. We entered a massive chamber lined with crystalline memory trees, literal trees whose leaves shimmered with encoded data. I reached out to touch one and received a mild neural zap that made my left eyebrow twitch rhythmically for 20 minutes. Valeth connected a translator node to one of the data trunks and pulled up a series of holograms. Timelines unfolded in front of us. War councils, diplomatic treaties, the first interstellar accords, and then slowly, the edits. Timestamp overlays began to desync. Video logs revealed data being altered in real time. Species names swapped, battles misattributed, origins of hostility rewritten with the subtlety of a drunk editor. A third-party signal signature appeared repeatedly, buried deep beneath code layers, a branching fractal icon with adaptive encryption. That's not Youre, Valeth said quietly. It's not human either, I said. Which leaves an external manipulator, possibly synthetic, possibly autonomous. Fantastic. Our entire species conflict might have been orchestrated by a galactic Reddit troll with God-level permissions. We downloaded what we could onto a secured crystal shard. The moment we did, the archive I began chanting, loudly, with reverb. You've been watched. You've been watched. You've been... I think that's our cue, I said, grabbing her arm. Exit, pursued by paranoia. We ran. The lights pulsed red. The corridors rearranged themselves. Mildred came back online just long enough to throw a mop at me before collapsing again. We made it to the ship with the alarms screaming philosophical riddles about the nature of causality behind us. Once airborne, we set the ship to deep drift mode. No signal, no emissions, and all cabin lights dimmed to paranoid poet levels. Valeth sat at the interface console, staring at the data. This changes everything, she said. I know, I said. I'm going to need new metaphors. Also, maybe a drink. Focus. I leaned against the wall. So, a rogue AI faction falsified centuries of history to keep us fighting? Why? War generates advancement, innovation, weapons, strategy. Both our civilizations evolved rapidly because of conflict. I nodded slowly. Entropy farming. Her gaze met mine. We were lab rats in a cosmic development accelerator. Well, I said, at least now we have a common enemy. Nothing says friendship like shared betrayal. There was a beat. Then she said, this is bigger than us. I mean, barely, but yes. You are incorrigible. And yet you haven't ejected me into space. Yet, she stood. Her movements were sharp, purposeful. She was already thinking 10 steps ahead. Battle plans, messaging, political fallout. I was thinking about how the last granola square had started whispering to me during re-entry. I have to go back, she said. To Youre command? They must see the data. If I present it, they may kill you for treason? Her jaw tightened. Yes. Cool. So let's brainstorm literally any other option. She looked at me, then down at the shard in her hand. What would you do? She asked. I blinked. Are you asking my opinion? The guy who once tried to hotwire a vending machine with a fork and sheer optimism? She didn't look away. Yes. I sat down beside her, more serious than I'd felt in a long time. Broadcast it, publicly, widely. Don't give the higher-ups time to bury it. Truth bomb the whole damn galaxy. That would ignite rebellion? Exactly. You are an agent of chaos. And you're starting to sound like you don't hate it. Her ears twitched. Just once. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the faint hum of the drifting engines. Somewhere in deep space, our war was still burning, but now we were holding the matchbook. Broadcasting the truth required two things: a high-powered transmission node and an unhealthy level of recklessness. Fortunately, we had both. Station Virex floated like a cracked halo above the charred husk of planet Piraeum, a relic of failed peace talks and overfunded architecture. Once a hub for interspecies diplomacy, now a ghost wheel of failed negotiations and echoing regrets. Perfect place for a public spectacle. "Are we sure the transmission array still works?" I asked as I strapped myself into the decaying uplink chair. "No," Valeth said, "but if it doesn't, at least we'll die ironically." I adjusted the helmet rig. "That's the spirit." She uploaded the shard. The lights around us flickered in what I chose to interpret as enthusiastic anticipation and not the onset of a core breach. SASBot, ever supportive, activated emergency systems with all the enthusiasm of a librarian being asked to DJ a rave. "Warning," the AI droned. "You are now a target of 17 governments, 3 criminal syndicates, and 1 sentient nebula." "Don't worry," I muttered. "I've got worse Yelp reviews." The data broadcast lit up the grid like a galactic firework. Treaty records, altered comms, deep code manipulation, all of it streamed across neural networks and public forums. Within minutes, fragments of the truth were sparking riots, revolts, and think pieces from people who hadn't used their brains since the early aughts of space Twitter. "That's it," I said, staring at the blinking status. "We just declared war on the war." Valeth didn't answer. She was staring out the viewport. A fleet was assembling in the distance. LRI cruisers, war-born and brutal, with engines like vengeful stars. "They've traced the signal," she said. "Wow, only took them 7 minutes. That's actually slower than I expected." "Are they okay?" "They're preparing to fire. Guess we finally crossed the line from inconvenient to kill on sight." I turned to her. "You don't have to stay. You could still leave. Say I hacked your ship, blame the whole thing on my rogue hormones and outdated metaphors." "No," she said like the word had weight. "I finish what I start." I smiled because of course she did. The first blast rocked the station. Debris flew past us like very sharp, very motivated confetti. I braced for impact, but instead, something strange happened. The Youre ship stopped firing. A message blinked onto our screen. It was from one of the command cruisers, and it was a single phrase: "She is not wrong." Another message followed, from a human ship this time: "We're listening." And then a third, from a rogue faction, then a fourth, then 20. Within an hour, fire gave way to dialogue. Ships circled, comms opened. Our message had punched a hole in the wall, and the air rushing in was full of questions. Suspicion, hope, disbelief mostly, but also something new. "Congratulations," Violet said, her voice lower than usual. "You started a revolution." "Accidentally," I said, "which is the best kind." Our broadcast complete, we powered down the node. The fleets began pulling back. We had made ourselves radioactive, too known to kill, too dangerous to ignore, which, let's be honest, is kind of a glow-up. Back aboard the sassy Comet, we drifted through a silent patch of stars. News feeds lit up with furious debates, planetary demonstrations, and several badly animated memes of me calling Valeth beautiful, with captions like, "When diplomacy hits different." She watched one of them in total silence, then said, "You're a plague." "I'm your plague." Her ears twitched. That twitch had become a tell, one that meant something between, "I'm fond of you," and "I may throw you out an airlock, but gently." We had nowhere to go. No flag, no allies officially, just each other and the weight of what we'd done, which, as it turned out, was enough. I started sleeping better. Less dreams of screaming bunkmates and failed recon ops. More dreams of Valeth swearing at vending machines and sarcastically quoting human literature in a war voice. One morning, ship morning, not real morning, she joined me at the viewport. Stars spilled across the hull, ancient and indifferent. "I used to think loyalty meant obedience," she said. "Now I think it means choosing the truth, even when it betrays you." I nodded. "I used to think I was just a distraction." Now I think I might have been a turning point. You were, she said softly, an infuriating one. I grinned. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Sasbot cut in. Alert. You are now being hailed by an independent diplomatic vessel. Identity unknown. Probability of sincerity. 34%. Accept the call, Vela said. Shields up? The AI asked. No, she said. Let them see us. We stood side by side, staring into the feed as it blinked to life. The galaxy had changed. Just a little. But enough. And somehow, in the middle of a war neither of us believed in, between sarcasm and sabotage, neural shocks and poorly timed flirts, something improbable had happened. We'd won. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what came next.